Welcome to the Six Hats podcast, where I, Dr. Shami, a lifestyle and nutritional medicine family doctor, will talk about how women strive to find balance each day by juggling their six roles, being a woman, mother, daughter, partner, business owner, and professional. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Six Hats podcast. And I'm so excited to have Nathalie Martinek join us again. She is a familiar name. You must have listened to her previous podcast. If you haven't, please listen. It's eye-opening and it's phenomenal how we just don't think about narcissism in our society. So Nathalie, just a quick recap, is an ex-systems biology and cancer researcher turned narcissism hacker, consultant, and independent medical culture researcher. So as a global consultant for leaders in healthcare, tech, and related industries, she now helps individuals and small groups navigate professional relationships that feature narcissistic behaviors. So welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you for having me back, Shami. It's great to be here.
Feel like you're going to be a regular somehow.
I'm happy with that, if you're happy with that, and everyone else is happy with that.
Amazing. So Nathalie, what really sort of triggered this podcast was your most recent article on Substack, and it's called Mothers Are Not Okay. And it's all about mothers trying to do it all and being under pressure in society to do it all. And what I loved about it is, wow, so many of my listeners will resonate. So many of my patients will resonate because I hear stories all the time. Because as many of my listeners know, I see patients with the end result of chronic stress of years, and you see it all as the physical symptoms from not only mental health, even thyroid, even gut, even weight, even sleep, even perimenopause. And often the root cause is chronic stress. And what drives chronic stress is the overwhelm in today's world. So many goalposts to attain, so many roles to play, and we're just being overwhelmed with information. So I loved it because I think let's have a real conversation about it, because it's not talked about enough. Because there's this whole show that everyone puts on when they go out in society going, right, I've got my job, I've got my kids, I've got my hobbies, I'm studying, I'm doing all sorts of different things. And I wonder if people are actually internalizing a lot of their stresses. So I'd love this conversation that we're about to have. So what inspired you to write this article?
Yeah, a few things. I'm always wondering, okay, what's the next thing? And then this one kind of appeared out of nowhere. I think I've been, I'm on Instagram and different social media platforms and LinkedIn, and you see everyone hustling to show what a great life they have or what a unhappy experiences they're having right now. And all of it is to just get attention, and gets me thinking about these women are working so hard. And I'm talking about women specifically, and mothers specifically are working so hard to hustle to get something. And it's either to have another income stream through social media influencing, or their entrepreneurial attempts to build, side hustle while they're in their jobs. They rarely talk about their day jobs. I notice it's always about the other things, the other shiny objects, the things they're trying to pump so that they can get a return, and then they can quit their jobs and live the dream, right? Where I work for myself, I'm my own boss, I have it all, I'm a boss babe and all that stuff. And they've all become like boss babe hashtag, or hashtag best life ever, or, like they're just brands. We're not humans. So I'm seeing more of that. And I was also reflecting on my own experiences, as I do, as you know, and being real about the chasing of ambition, and looking for the thing that will make me happy, looking for the right move or the right job or the right whatever to fill what felt like an emptiness inside me. And of course, nothing was going to fill it. I'd get satisfaction thinking I'm following the right thing because I had some, spiritual guidance or a mystical experience, or I was following the breadcrumbs of something that led me to this new shiny thing. But it's not the thing, because the thing is nothing. We have to address what is the nature of this whole. And so I've started seeing, recently people posting about doing some dramatic changes in their lifestyle to chase some dream. And in this case, spirituality as another ambition to chase and achieve and attain, as if it's something you could measure or something that it can translate into a credential or, some legitimacy that you can claim. Look how great I am, or look up, I'm so fulfilled now. Look, I've done this other thing or attained this other thing. And there was a LinkedIn post that went viral about a woman talking about what was the point of accumulating all these things, because she was looking down at her husband who didn't have these ambitions, and he's just fine trotting along doing what he's doing. But she's kind of coming across as if he's got it all wrong and she's got it all right. And by the end of her post, give her credit, she started to question whether or not her approach is actually the right approach. But the fact is, we are so conditioned. People could blame the patriarchy. You could scapegoat whatever you want. Our parents, our, culture, patriarchy, systemic inequality, whatever it is, for trying to live up to some standard that is completely unrealistic and ends up disconnecting ourselves from ourselves even more, not bringing us closer to our authentic self or our truth, as people say. So that's sort of behind the inspiration. And I wanted to share some of my experience without talking too much about myself, just through the observations. And again, what are the psychological or unconscious things that are driving us to achieve things that are unachievable or unattainable and not even worth attaining?
Amazing. Amazing. I often actually say sometimes we can go through life like a robot, it can be very robotic. And like exactly what you said, we're actually influenced by the people around us and what we see. And it's really important to go back to you and go, right, what exactly are my values? Is it aligned? And is this something that I actually want to do? Because you're spot on. It's so easy. The programming from childhood, whether it's family, then school, then teachers, and then social media, to go, oh my God, that's what I want. And you mentioned something really important. Are we just trying to strive for happiness outside of ourselves rather than internalizing? But we get caught up on this journey of someone else's desires rather than our own. And it's okay to go, actually, I don't really want to do anything this weekend. I actually want to chill. I actually don't want to have so many accolades or titles or degrees. It doesn't matter. This is what I actually want to do. And this is a great reminder, our conversation, Adley, to go back with it and go, what do I want? Because it's so easy to be influenced. Maybe a brother or sister that's done really well, so-called in society's terms, really well, whether it's earning more money, titles, whatever that looks like, that you feel compelled to go on that journey. And again, you might be, when we hone it back to mothers, again, you might see mothers in your groups going, wow, how does she do that? Like run a business, have a high flying job, travels. How does she do that with kids? And, not without much family support. And so you're absolutely right. It's where did it all begin? And maybe we don't know, but there is a lot of conditioning, a lot of influences that we can start to be aware of. And just to go back to, okay, what's your reality? And I often say to patients, it's someone else's reality that you're stepping into. We need to go back to your reality and be okay with that. What are your thoughts on that, Nathalie?
Yeah, I'm thinking about where did it start? Well, we could think about feminist movement and, women rightfully wanting equal status in society to men. And what that translated into is, well, women could do the same jobs as men or enter into the workforce in the same way as men. And they've had to adopt more masculine traits in order to be taken seriously, because you're entering into male-dominated spaces. So you have to adjust yourself and assimilate. And there's, lots of problems with that, as many women talk about, as still not being accepted or taken seriously. But we've gotten to the point where, previously male-dominated workforces are now more female-dominated, including academic spaces, university, and less men are interested in going because it's eliminated the competitive spirit, which really drive men to want to participate in things. So it's and then also the economic changes. You can't really get away with one income if that one income isn't going to cover all the costs and the comforts that everyone wants. So it's forced women to enter and do things. And then as a result, I think unconsciously starting to think about what they can attain and achieving goals in order to climb and promote and get promoted, and the ambitions. So we started developing ambitions that, 100 years ago, women couldn't have, they wouldn't dream of having. And we also exist in a society where there's been we're overwhelmed by choice. We have, I'm not going to try to glorify the past. The past wasn't so great. There's good and bad, but we had less and less choice. Now we're just overwhelmed. There's too much agency. There's too much like lack of restriction on some things and some restriction on other things. But I think there's too much. So we have this kind of decision anxiety. And so there's so many things we could do and options that we now have that together, economics, social changes, I just think it's created a bit of a mess, and it's taken women, it's downgraded the role of motherhood, the title of motherhood, and caused many of us, me included, we talked about in a previous podcast, that deprioritize motherhood is something important. So it is probably the most important job if one was to become a mother, because you are raising humans that you would want to be independent and ethical and good citizens who will carry on lineage if they want to have children. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that there's been so many adjustments to society, and it's just made all of us crazy, and we forget who we are more easily because there's just so many choices and so many things that influence us, and not in the best ways.
And if we break it down to tiny little steps, so if someone's listening going, wow, I could totally resonate with that. But what's that first tiny step you could do? Because you're in overwhelm and, million and one roles. You may be overworked, you may be burnt out, you may not be sleeping. And I often say when you're in that cycle, or a lot of people turn to sugar, alcohol, caffeine, which again affects our brain health. So we can't actually think clearly. And then you've got the whole idea of, the whole thing about brain fog as well. So what would you say? What are our steps forward, Nathalie?
First step, I think, is to start to block everything out. So get rid of all the things that are influencing you to think a certain way and to chase certain things. So social media is number one. Reading the news, they're not there to make us feel good. They're there to make us feel insecure and inferior, inadequate, and get a rise of our emotions, because that's what creates the addictive pattern of just keep, scrolling and looking and seeking. So you need to create space to reclaim your mental faculties so that you can think clearly and not have all the invasive thoughts of everything of the collective bombarding you. So number one thing is switch everything off and rest. And instead of reading from your screen, read a book, read a classic novel, read philosophy, read a sacred text, read something that is wholesome that will get you thinking again. But you can't think clearly or even start to question your beliefs if you're in that cycle that you just described. So you'll talk about the physical things you could do, like the eating, the, exercise, the sleep. I'm thinking about the mental things to just get rid of the external influences. And that might also include people in your life who, after spending time with them, you don't feel so great about yourself. So the same effect that social media is having, that person, whether it's a parent or a friend or some other person in your life, minimize your exposure to them or the types of conversations you have. So that's what I think would be a good first step.
And to many, that might go, wow, that sounds scary. Because the number of times I talk about sleep hygiene and, even taking away that phone an hour before bed or looking at your coffee intake. And it's really amazing how attached we are to these things. And that really close attachments, almost please don't take it away. And I always go, okay, let's talk about that. Let's go deeper and go, why so attached? Why is there sort of like almost an addiction? What's the association with this? And it's time to just take a moment and go, why is that so important? Having that coffee in the morning and scrolling before bed. And we've created these habits that we've created importance to. So when someone suggests removing that, it's actually quite confronting to even think about. But in your article, you talk about attachment.
Yeah. So the article is mostly about mothers speaking spirituality as another thing to achieve, as another ambition. So whether it's enlightenment or being the best meditator on earth or whatever it is, it's become another thing to achieve, another thing on the to-do list rather than what it's there for, and recognizing the inherent or innate presence of a mother to be able to, spiritual in itself. You don't need to look for anything outside of yourself. But you also have to be okay with yourself and okay to be with yourself without all these distractions and external things telling you what you need to do to be better. So I spoke about attachment. So these are beliefs that we have that take us down the path of, in order for me to be the best or to have fulfillment, I need to do X. So in terms of following a spiritual path or getting on a spiritual path, that becomes the thing, the condition for a person's fulfillment. And that in itself is a problem because you've just put a condition on something to give you, you've put an expectation on something to give you what you want. It doesn't work that way. We don't get what we want because we want it. And part of it is, I'm so and so and I deserve the best. You hear those statements a lot from women. I deserve it. I remember the Clairol commercials with Sarah Jessica Parker, and she would say, I think, or L'Oreal, not Clairol, sorry. And, she's like, because I'm worth it. So there's like this sense of entitlement that I should have what I want because I deserve it. And you know what? No one deserves anything. No one owes you anything. There's something about a lack of personal responsibility and a sense of either having too much control where I'm trying to control my experience. So if I do this, I'm going to get that. And because of our lack of control, we try to control other things. So spirituality might seem like a more attainable goal that because of the way it's advertised or promoted by so many influencers and people in social groups, I've started meditating. I'm doing spiritual healings. I'm going to these pilgrimages, in India or in Indonesia or whatever. And I'm feeling so much better and I feel so much more awake and aware. And this is the advertising, but no one's talking about the times when they're feeling not that. They're feeling like absolute crap because with the highs come the lows, and that's normal. That's just part of it until you develop enough of a sense of being where you don't rely on all these attachments to give you what you need and you develop a sense of equanimity or acceptance about the way things are. Doesn't mean you're powerless to make change. Of course, you're powerful enough to make change, but of the things that you're in control to do, and you're not in control of spirituality. Nobody is. So some of the attachments I've talked about, and I talk about them as well when I speak about narcissistic behavior or narcissistic traits. We're attached, narcissistic people want status. They want attention, they want affection, they want validation, and they believe they're entitled to it. So the attachment of social status and external validation and a certain image or identity that you put forth to the world, that only you want everyone to see you in that way. Attachment to, being seen as important. So being seen as someone important within a social hierarchy. So even a group of mothers who go on spiritual retreats together, there's going to be this internal competition that nobody talks about because that's not the sisterhood. So we pretend that we all get along and we're happy for each other. So when someone has this great spiritual experience, oh, we're so happy for them. But there's envy. Women are envious. Talked about this in the past. It's part of our nature. We're competitive. We just show it differently than men do. Attachments to ambition, just to have an ambition, another goal I need to achieve, because if I'm not achieving goals, then I'm worthless. I need to be important in some way. I need to be useful in some way. Attachment to spiritual authorities or spiritual figures or people who are perceived to be more spiritually advanced, whatever that means. Creating a hierarchy of spiritual principles. Attachment to comfort. We see a lot of this. Oh, I feel unsafe now. You have to see me in a certain way. Otherwise, you're not safe to be around. Come on. And again, attachment to narratives, beliefs, having false humility. So part of the self-image is to put forth this, I'm so humble and I'm here to learn from everyone. But no, they're not. And they're just putting on a show. And a common one is spiritual bypassing, just maintaining self-deception so that you can preserve an image or an ideal, a fantasy that is incorruptible by anyone else. So you will bypass certain emotional states or feelings in order to maintain that image. An aversion to struggle or suffering. People reframe their suffering so that it's, oh no, there's a purpose to my suffering now, versus I'm just suffering. It's just how it is in this moment. And it'll, hopefully I'll come out of it with some actions or acceptance. And and believing or an entitlement to spiritual reward. So a lot of people donate to a spiritual or religious community with the belief that they will get things back, or so-and-so is unwell, I need to donate. So it's almost like a business transaction versus so many other ways we can give selflessly that isn't dependent on some material thing, because it creates, again, this hierarchy of people who don't have the money. So they start to believe, well, I can't donate a certain amount. Does that mean I'm screwed? Does that mean I'm less blessed? It creates these kinds of competition within a group of people that, again, is a distraction versus finding ways to become more at peace with all the parts of yourself, all the aspects of yourself, all the emotions, all the experiences. Doesn't mean you have to like them. Doesn't mean that they can't be painful. But then starting with acceptance is a way to move away or to start to sever those attachments. Yeah, and the addiction to spiritual highs or epiphanies or the things that we see on the inner plane, and people use them as some sort of clout, like I am more spiritually advanced because I see these things. And it sounds crazy, doesn't it?
It's
It sounds,
so contradictory about
yeah,
the entire journey.
yeah, yeah. It's ego. And this is about refining the ego. It's about spirituality is about eventually a byproduct of is you cultivate humility and patience and the characters, which can be called, human attributes or divine qualities or virtues. They don't happen because you've achieved goals. It's the process that you go through. And it happens because you have to struggle. There has to be tension in your life, and that you can't just easily get through and go, yep, I'm done. I learned a lot. Yay. Tick that off. You actually have to churn through quite a bit. And the process is actually about exposing self deception and starting to doubt your beliefs and starting to follow those doubts so that you can discover what is no longer your truth. But the problem is people want to maintain and sustain certain beliefs and ways of seeing themselves. So that's, again, the whole thing is a battle with the ego. But with the subset of women I'm thinking about who are mothers, they lose that battle every time because they don't go through that process because it's painful. I don't blame them. I didn't do it for a long time of wanting to expose their ignorance, self-deception. But why do they want to hold on to certain beliefs? Because those beliefs are the causing the suffering more than anything else.
So true.
Yeah. So that's attachment in a nutshell.
That's amazing, Natalie. But I'd love to go back to you. You were saying in your journey, at what point did you realize that things had to change?
I had to get to the point where I recognized that the common denominator of all my struggle was me. And it's again so easy to blame my husband, not to say he's blameless about some things. Yeah, there are things he can improve on, my kids, my parenting, but me. I was wanting more and more and more. I was wanting a fantasy, and I had to accept that fantasy doesn't exist. There's a reality that exists right now, and I need to learn to explore and accept it and discover the things that I can, the small improvements I can make that will support me to, live out my principles. And it doesn't mean changing other people. It doesn't mean changing my environment dramatically. It doesn't mean, moving to like India or some, other sacred place because that will make me better. None of that. Although lots of people think that, but it's none of that. I had to stand still for a little while and sit with the discomfort of not moving and run and jumping into a cycle of chaos, because the mothers I describe here and that describe me is once I had enough peace for a little bit, I needed to find the next thing. I jump into the chaos. I needed to create instability because that would make me think that I'm working on stuff and I'm moving towards stuff rather than, wouldn't it be nice if there's something of a period of uneventfulness and that I could just experience that and sit with the discomfort that comes up that makes me go, but you need to produce, you need to attain, you need to achieve these goals, you need to get better, you need to do this. That's going on in my mind, but I had to sit through it. And once you increase your tolerance to that sense of urgency and the desire to create chaos, when you have access to all this peace, because peace is uncomfortable to those who are used to chaos. Chaos is familiar and therefore more comfortable, paradoxically. So once you get used to sitting in that intolerable space for a while, you become more tolerant to it and you find yourself less inclined to jump into things and you start giving yourself the space to question opportunities that come to you that seem like this is the thing, this is the next thing that will give me fulfillment, and go, actually, what is it reminding me of? Am I at risk of going back and repeating the same thing that I had to work through in the past? Why do I want this? What do I think is going to give me? Is it something that like excites me? Because sometimes excitement is masquerading as like anxiety and urgency, or excitement is just another form of chaos. Why do I have to destabilize my life to chase this thing or take on this thing? If it's not going to increase stability and peace, why would I do it? But it's counterintuitive for lots of people. Excitement means this is something I shouldn't say no to.
Oh, true. Oh my God, I can so resonate with that because we're just drawn by desires each and every day. Whether you see this on social media or TV or a film, you're like, oh, I want that, or this sounds exciting. And it's just going back and it's something so simple. I was reading, it's just a funny little story. I was reading somewhere going, right, we're consuming too much in today's world, far too much. And so this lady was saying, I think it was a podcast that I was listening to, saying, right, people are very quick to buy online, very quick. You put it into your bag and it's so easy to purchase. What she says, leave it in that checkout bag for a month and see if you need it.
Yeah.
And it's almost, we just need to pause and actually go, actually, didn't want that. And I don't even like it. And
Yeah.
why did I even want to buy it? And I thought,
Yeah.
it's so simple, but it can actually relate to so many aspects of life where you go, put it in your whatever checkout box and just wait and just check in and go, do I really want it? Do I need to sign up for another course? Do I need to buy another online program? Do I need to study again? There's so many areas where we make quick decisions.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes like what you said.
Yeah. There's something about delayed gratification. That just because I can have it doesn't mean I should have it. Just because I want it doesn't mean I need it. And there's a difference between following desire, because there's been this whole kind of explosion of thought leadership around, follow your bliss, and desires will point you towards, your bigger vision and mission. But they have to be balanced with some logic and rational thinking. And so otherwise, it's like a child who you're always giving in to their demands, and they become these narcissistic adults because they don't have any boundaries. They say no to boundaries because they haven't been taught the, self-restraint from a very young age. They haven't had that modeling. So we end up having these like entitled people with emotional immaturity in these adult bodies, in men and women. So yeah, we don't have to give in to our desires. We can actually probe them a little bit and go, what is this about? What is this saying to me? Is this something that I'm needing because that's what my thought is, because it links to a belief that I have that I think will give me about fulfillment? Or is this something different? So it's hard to develop that discernment, especially if you're just used to responding to your desires, your cravings, or you're good at gaslighting yourself into believing these desires are wholesome, and it's like your spiritual guidance that you need to follow. Like, we can come up with all sorts of justifications to get us what we want, but doesn't mean that that's what we need. Often what we need is going to be a horrendous experience or really uncomfortable, anywhere on that spectrum of shittiness, because how else do we grow unless we're uncomfortable? There needs to be tension. There needs to be some struggle in order to grow. And that's like the non-sexy part of life that no one, or some people like to try to glorify on their social media and turn it into a thing. But it really is about character development. But unless it's somebody's actual goal, and again, it's not something you can control. The only thing you control is your conduct, and hopefully that it aligns with your principles and in your practice. But over time, I can see that my patience has completely increased. And I can't say that my humility is completely increased, because I'm not a judge of humility. Others will have to judge that for me based on their experience of me. But from what I've been told, that yes, there's humility. There's a sense of humility. I've got a long way to go. But these are the things that I'm interested in cultivating. And I can't if I'm constantly searching and seeking things that are fulfilling. Because as I'm discovering, as I'm growing in these character traits and these attributes, I feel more fulfilled. I feel more at home in myself. I spent the month of January just doing nothing. I took that time off work I didn't go anywhere. I just stayed still and contemplated, spent time with my family, just piddled around and rested. And, why people would be like, why would you waste that time off to do nothing? But it's not a waste. It's just part of some growth experience that I want to have, that I didn't have to flee somewhere else. I can get what I need here within myself and my social connections.
Oh my God, that's beautiful words, Ashley, because literally you said such a key word there, wasting. How, doing nothing considered a waste, and so many people's mind and narrative, that's what they say, but we can reframe that to nourishment, to growth. You've mentioned something so important, being uncomfortable doing nothing, being comfortable sitting and reflecting. I think these are beautiful words to end with. So Nathalie, thank you so much for today's conversation. Where can people find you and read more?
They can find me on Substack under hackingnarcissism.com. That's the Hacking Narcissism Substack, and that will lead you to all the other things, all the other places you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nathalie.
Thank you, Shami.
Remember that this is general advice only. Please see your healthcare professional for more information. So what's your take-home message today? Remember, it's all about progress and not perfection. And are you suffering from stress? Visit the Usawa Learning Hub on usawa.com.au for more resources on how to de-stress, re-energize, and reclaim your health. Enjoy the journey.